Dear Commissioner Kubilius, Her Excellency Mr. Ambassador Tombiński, Honorable Major General Freuding, dear Mrs. van Haan, Dr. Voorhoop, Dr. Atzbodin, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to you all. In our European House in Berlin, we are very happy that we mobilized such a huge number of guests today for our event on the future of the European defense, and notably the white paper that was published today in Brussels. And we are particularly pleased to have Mr. Kubilius here, our Commissioner for Defense and Space in Berlin. Berlin and Germany is central to European defense, and not only geographically. There is no European security without Germany and its strong defense industry. This week saw a really good match of coordination between Europe and Germany. Whilst the White Book was presented in Brussels, the Bundestag agreed on a historic step to reform its fiscal rules to allow for bigger defense spending. And the Bundesrat gave its agreement this morning, a perfect landing for our event today. And a really good message for Europe. We are living in harsh times in terms of security, and although there are still different perceptions in EU member states of how serious the situation currently is, one thing is sure. In the case of a worst case scenario of a real aggression on EU territory, it would affect us all. And we have to stand together. The German Lieutenant General Jürgen Joachim von Sandrart, the former commanding general of the multinational corps in Szczecin, Poland, said recently, if we want to live in self-determined freedom, then we must defend it. We have no choice. And he added, it is a great opportunity for this society to move from I to we. But we have to use this opportunity. We have to get this done. This crisis must spur us on, and it can be done. He spoke those words for Germany, but they are notably valid for the EU. In the EU, we have to move from I to we in defense and translate it into very concrete action. At the same time, keeping in mind that rebuilding European defense begins in Ukraine, as the white paper says. This is why we are here today. And last but not least, we organized this event in a very short time. I want to thank my great colleagues who helped to get it done, and I want to particularly thank our honorable panelists who agreed to participate at such a short notice. It shows that we can mobilize ourselves if really needed, and we have to show in Europe that we can mobilize ourselves as well to defend us, to defend our values. Thank you very much, and I hand over to our moderator, Dr. Christian Mölling. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Also a warm welcome from my side. I'm really overwhelmed that this room is more than full. Every seat is taken. That shows not only interest, but I hope also that the recognition of the importance of the topic that we are talking about, European defense and the contribution of the European Commission on this. And with these words, I would just like to hand over to the Commissioner on Security, Defense and Space, Mr. Kubilius. Floor is yours.
Okay, maybe both will work. So really thanks a lot for coming to this discussion, for organizing these discussions, for our European colleagues here in Berlin. Really, it's very special days, and as you have said, we are matching Brussels and Berlin. We're trying, I would call we are competing. Who will announce, stronger statements on defense. And definitely, I would like to congratulate German government of today and of the future. And those decisions are really such a strong and inspiring example to, I hope, to all other member states in Europe that we can just applaud. And such kind of actions really we need now. And we need to act fast and we need to act big. And in order really to be ready for the wars of today and for the wars of tomorrow. I will not try to speak too much about white paper. I would advise maybe if somebody wants to have good political overview of what the European Union were trying to do. Of course, you should read white paper, but also you should read the recent speech 2 days ago given by Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in Copenhagen in military academy. It's a perfect description of all how we see the situation, looking from Commission windows, from EU leadership windows, and what we will need to do. And all the essence of what we need to do was, again, I will quote Commission President from her speech when she said in a very simple way, if Europe wants to avoid war, Europe must get ready to the war. And well, since there are also military people, I am as poor as civilian, I will not go very much into details of military things, but when I see as a former prime minister some numbers where we are and where, for example, Russia is, then I understand very much how big are the threats and how big job we need to do. I will remind simply just two numbers. One is what NATO General Secretary is speaking out, that Russia during 3 months at the moment is able to produce more weapons than all the NATO member states are able to produce during 1 year. All the NATO member states, including United States, including Great Britain, Canada, and all of us. So that is one thing. And second, that this year, if to measure in so-called purchasing power parity, Russia will spend for military needs more than all of us EU member states will spend for our defense. So my conclusion is here always very simple. If we shall allow such numbers, such inequality to stay for a longer period of time, we shall keep temptation for Putin going on to test us very soon. And again, we need to take into account very seriously what the intelligence services, German intelligence service or Danish intelligence service recently have said, that in Kremlin there are going real discussions about possibilities to test Article 5 in the nearest future, at least till 2030. So those are realities. Realities which we are facing. From another side, of course, realities are so-called going negotiations or whatever we can call them, on ceasefire in Ukraine, and also some steps or some statements which we can hear from our partners on another side of Atlantic. Again, I will not elaborate too much on that, but from the very beginning, even before American elections, when I was nominated as a candidate to become commissioner, I was always repeating that we have two challenges to have in mind. One is very urgent. It's really Russia and Ukraine, and now we see even more evidences of what are the threats here and what are the urgencies. Second one, I was repeating that since we also see that Chinese military power is growing very rapidly, we need to have in mind that it will lead to more and more of American pivot towards Indo-Pacific, to Asia, to mitigate Chinese military power, and we need to be ready for that. Now I repeat it again, those numbers, which it's not my invention, but that that 450 million Europeans. We should not ask, we should not cry for 340 million Americans to defend us against 140 million Russians who are not able to defeat 38 million Ukrainians. So that's, that's the number. So we need really to take more and more of responsibility on our shoulders, and to do that without delays, because the threats and urgency is here. So So I simply will say a few words about white paper. White paper has several clear priorities. One is, of course, search and defense spending. So some steps on defense spending were done even before white paper was published. So that's how it's incredible how speedy, European Union is becoming when real crisis is coming. So, and as you know, after 2 weeks of previous European Council, Commission on this Wednesday approved not only a white paper, but also very important regulations on so-called safe loans, 150 billion attractive loans which are backed by European Union budget. Also on possibilities for member states to use so-called escape clause and to have 1.5% of GDP not to be included, spent on defense not to be included into deficits. That opens possibilities. Again, I want always to stress, those are possibilities, so opportunities for member states to invest into defense quite big amounts of money. We can calculate, that it will open during the next 4 years to spend around 800 billion for defense. I'm always also reminding that it's only additional money. If we will calculate all the money, and if we shall have such an ideal situation that from the next year after NATO summit, member states will start to spend 3.5%, because now we're adding 1.5 to 2%, so 3.5% annually will mean that all EU member states will spend around 600 billion euros for defense, which means during 4 years it will be 2.4 trillion. And since member states are spending around 30% for defense equipment, so we shall have 800 billion real money going into defense industry, into defense equipment, and so on and so on. So this is really whatever, big bang search, or we can call it how we want to know. Possibility for that is here. What member states will do, we shall see, but I hope that really here also we shall be able to convince member states to go ahead. So as I said, first is search and defense spending. Second is really closing capability gaps and not having in mind only the wars of today, but also the wars of tomorrow. And gaps analysis, we are basing our analysis on NATO reviewing of defense plans and capability gaps. We want to have very clear list of the needs in order for us to create what we call aggregated demand, to create visibility for the industries, for financial markets, and also to understand how much it will cost for us to implement all those needed things. And of course, when we are talking about filling capability gaps, at least my view is maybe too simplified, but I am always saying that, well, first of all, we need to look into possibility how we can ramp up massive production, what we call of the same, of conventional things, conventional stuff, artillery, ammunition, and so on and so on. But that's only part of what we need to do. Second, very important is exactly developing so-called, developing our capabilities with so-called strategic enablers, where, strategic airlift, air-to-air refueling, space assets, space intelligence data, and we can name a name, and besides experts, I am curious that they can name much more of what is needed, but that is where we are very heavily dependent exactly on American services. So we need to do that again in the urgent way to fill those gaps. And third direction is implementing big defense projects of common European interest, like air defense shield or eastern northern border defense shield. And again, here we need to look not only into the wars of today, but also into the wars of tomorrow, drones, electronic warfare and things like that. So those are three directions on industrial gaps. But also we cannot forget to take care not only about guns, but also about military mobility, since we understand very well that, again, there are problems which we need to resolve, both from infrastructural point of view, but also from legal point of view. And that is what we are also keeping in mind. The third priority, of course, is strengthening European defense industrial base, which I would call attempts to resolve structural problems of our defense industry and defense market. Which, again, I will not repeat, but if you will read Draghi report, everything is said in a very clear way. Fragmentation, a lot of money, national money, which we're spending on defense, we're spending outside of our defense industry. And I'm always repeating that from my point of view, despite the fact that I am civilian, not a military one, but when I am looking what defense resources we need to develop, besides, let's say, procurement of weapons, besides military personnel and military mobility, for me, defense industry, it looks as very important strategic resource for defense. Because if we will face real war, we shall need to have industry not far away from the war zone, with possibilities to repair, to maintain, and to produce new. So that's why when we're spending our money somewhere else, we need to understand that we are not really taking care about one of the very important defense resources. And that is what we need to have in mind. And also, that demands from us changes in how we are realizing our defense through procurements and so on. For me, joint procurement, again, is a very crucial strategic instrument which we need to learn how to use, and we need to have possibilities to incentivize that such kind of joint procurement. And additional point where we are talking also in white paper in a very important way is, of course, what we call simplification, or removing obstacles through simplification. In June, we shall need to come with so-called simplification omnibus in defense, and we can, just understand what does it mean. I'm always showing an example when somebody is saying, well, you are creating opportunities to finance, you are expecting that industry will produce, but industries are taking a lot of time for them to expand their capacities to produce what is needed. I'm saying, let's look into Ukraine. Back in 2022, all the Ukrainian defense industry was able to produce weapons with a total value per year of 1 billion euros. Because of the war, because they went for real simplification of all the different regulations. Last year, they concluded the year, they ended the year with possibility to produce 35 billion euros value weapons. Increase of capacity by 35 times. That's a real big bang. So I don't think that we need to we need 35 times to increase our capacities, but I'm just showing that this is really possible. And the last, but maybe it should be the first chapter, when we are talking about white paper, is of course our support to Ukraine. And I will not elaborate again. What we are saying with all what was done till now. 50 billion euros provided by European Union for Ukrainian strengthening Ukrainian defense capabilities. I would remind that if you will recalculate those 50 billion into annual support, which means around of 16 billion per year, we are giving military support. It's below 0.1% of our GDP. So we need to have this in mind. We can do more. And with Rearm Europe new instruments, especially with safe, attractive loans, AAA loans, 45 years maturity and 10 years of grace, we can do. I think that we can find together with Ukraine and with member states new possibilities how really we can increase quite substantially our support to Ukrainian defense. Also, we are looking into possibilities to strengthen our institutional cooperation in defense with creating task force to coordinate all aspects of our defense support with Ukraine. We are going to speed up integration of Ukrainian defense industry with European one. That is for, we expect that Parliament and Council will agree quite soon with so-called EDIP program, which has a chapter on integration. And I would say, again, I'm just starting to understand now, what we wrote into white paper. Because white paper is about the future of European defense. And we included, well, rationally, we included all things related with Ukrainian defense. Which means that, I don't know if this is the first time when we are including into our defense documents Ukraine as a real, partner in our defense. So that's, for me, it looks like a step forward, in our political thinking, at least. So this is what white paper is about. But I'm always repeating that, yeah, it was good to draft, white paper to discuss with all the experts. We got more than inputs from more than 20 member states, from industries, from experts, and so on. Thanks a lot to everybody. And Germany here was very, very active and very good, association of industry. And this period of 100 days of what I call of reflections really was very much, needed. I saw how, in some way, convergence of our attitudes was starting to come, and that is why I was not so much surprised when some steps were done even before white paper was published, because it was very clear that we are on the same page with all the most important players in this field. For me, approval of white paper is also the start of joint action, and that is why even during presentation I said, well, for me now most important is implementation, implementation, implementation. Implementation, simplification, and realization of new opportunities. I'm always repeating, that, well, I saw quite a lot of expectations in the public from white paper. I was always repeating, we need to understand very simple thing. We cannot expect that Putin will be deterred while we shall read him loudly our white paper. No, that's my very practical, understanding. So, but implementation of white paper, with production of needed, weapons, with production of with strengthening all our capabilities, with strengthening of Ukrainian capabilities, that is what really will make the difference. So, I will perhaps come to the end of my explanation. I will not talk too much about again, I said some few words about financial part of all the implementation with the safe loans, with the escape clause. Next week we shall also approve communication on revision of cohesion policy, which will allow member states to spend cohesion money on things related with defense. Because again, we need to understand that development of, for example, of defense industry is also creation of the jobs, is possibility to develop economically the regions, and so on and so on. So we are removing simply obstacles for which were existing for cohesion funds to be spent on defense issues. Today, perhaps I haven't seen information, but today European Investment Bank also is doing very important step. Again, that was our permanent conversation with them, that they should remove those obstacles to invest into defense, what they had in their mandate. Now, they will, at least what we were informed, they will narrow very much, description of the prohibitions. So a lot of fields will become available. And also on Wednesday, we approved quite an important document, communication on savings and investment union, which would, we hope, steps which we are, planning to do, will open private money, possibility for private funds to move into defense. Now, one thing which I would like to stress, because we saw some media reports which were not correct on one specific issue, because we saw that when we approved safe regulation on safe loans, somebody told, Europeans are doing quite a strange job because we kicked out, at least it looked like that we kicked out United Kingdom and Canada. So it's really not objective evaluation. Because first of all, we are creating additional possibilities to invest into defense at the level of 800 billion. So 600 billion will come from national defense spending, which is totally unregulated, where member states will want to spend in Canada, in the United States, or in Britain, they will be able to spend. It's better that they should spend in Europe, but that will depend on how much we shall be able to incentivize them. Second, again, when we're talking about European loans, we repeated the same what was done with previous programs on European level. We said that, first of all, contractors, or let's say, weapons can be procured from companies which belong to European member states and which are established on European territory. That's again repeated. Third countries or entities which belong to third countries also can participate in this program if they are established on European territory. That was, again, nothing new. But what is new that we additionally put one additional paragraph that if countries which are friendly with the European Union will sign so-called security and defense partnerships, then also there will be a possibility that those loans will be allowed to be used to procure weapons produced in those countries directly. So we are removing here this, request to use those money for the industries which are established on the European continent. So we are simply expanding possibilities for those countries with whom we are in a very strong solidarity to move ahead. And I hope that quite soon we shall have also partnership agreements with Canada and Great Britain signed and started to be implemented. So that's perhaps all what I wanted to say on white paper. Sorry, maybe too long, but yeah, that's politicians always impossible to stop.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner. And if you would like to take the center seat, that would be brilliant. So I would like to get our other panelists on the panel right now. And Herr Freuding, gehen Sie ganz darüber, das wäre super.
I will take my...
Ich habe einen im Kopf. Ich sage sie Ihnen jetzt, genau. Herr Freuding geht ganz nach links. Sie können da daneben, genau. Thank you very much. Yes, a rich menu already. Thanks for that, Mr. Commissioner. And a rich panel as well, which represents all the key actors, at least from the German ecosystem in this. And so we'll try to at least sketch out as to what extent what the Commission now presents also meets the demands of the different stakeholders in there. And I have to say, we'll do some rounds here on the panel, but nonetheless, there will be the opportunity from all of you in the room, as well as those who are watching us online, to bring in their questions later on. So after we have a conversation on the panel, there will be opportunities for you to enter also into the question and answers. We have microphones in the room. I'd like to ask you, if possible, to put your question in English, so I don't have to translate it. If that's not possible, no problem. If you want to do it in German, I can do the translation on the spot. The same is true for the people online. Write your questions in the chat, and I will receive it, not through a miracle, but through an iPad that is lying around here as well. So thanks very much. And with no further ado, I would like to start with the alternative customer, which is the military. And Christian Freuding had his own success today because he brought this, because of his responsibility, of many responsibilities you have, but one primary responsibility is the support of Ukraine. And luckily, we managed today, or you managed today, to get through with your team another 3 billion support from Germany towards Ukraine, which is a great success. After so many weeks, we had to wait for it. And I know many people fought behind the scenes that we get it through. If you now look forward to the offer that comes from the Commission, what are the most important or most salient points I would say this is something which would really help Ukraine in the future and also possibly integrates them deeper into the European defense system at large? Where would you see this what come out of the white paper and say this is one of the top gold dust that is in there that we can implement very easily and help the Ukraine.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. I'm just really slipping out from the budget committee. We are very happy that our lawmakers decided today, after, as you mentioned, weeks, that we can increase our support for Ukraine in 2025 with 3 additional billion euro. Going even further for the years to come with additional 8 billion euro. I think that's quite a substantial package of all in all 11 billion euro. And I think where we can find support from what is stated in the EU white paper is especially that we have similar areas, main focus areas with regard to procurement, which is very much useful not only for Ukraine, but for the European defense forces as well. Especially it's about air defense, it's about artillery, it's about unmanned systems, not only UAVs, but also about unmanned ground vehicles. I think what the Commissioner mentioned already, that the financial instruments will be very useful. Not only for the European armed forces, but also for Ukraine support. You mentioned interoperability. Interoperability is one of the key words, one of the buzzwords with regard to the future of Ukraine defense and future of Ukraine security. I think interoperability was one of the phrases in the communique in Vilnius and in Washington as well, that Ukrainian armed forces must be interoperable, which means in essence that we have to focus our procurement as a kind of joint procurement to make Ukrainian forces interoperable over time. Over time means very quickly to the NATO forces. And of course, it's, if you procure together for Ukraine, with Ukraine, and within the European, within NATO forces and the European armed forces, we will be able to scale up production, which I think is one of the most pressing needs we currently have in Europe, that we are not able to produce in large numbers, that we are not able to produce like industrialized manner. And so I think there is a lot of mutual benefit within the white paper, ramping up production, equipping our armed forces and supporting Ukraine.
Yeah, thanks very much. That brings us immediately to industry, to Mrs. Hahn and Mr. Atzpudin. I mean, so there's big hope that you can ramp up. How does it look like? Would you like to start? So we start with the classical industry, and then we go over the space and the aerospace.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think I can speak on behalf of all the industry colleagues here in the room that the white paper, Commissioner Kubilius, is highly appreciated with this approach, which first of all says in the introduction already, we need a stronger and more resilient defense industrial base. This is something which we, of course, like to hear. But then, as General Freuding pointed out, the issues about harmonizing needs among the European customers, this is really key, because this is what we need in order to know how many products of hopefully at the moment existing products, how many pieces, in which period of time we have to produce, because that is essential in order to do a proper planning for the upscaling exercise we have to do. So it would not be a good idea if customers would come one after the other saying, okay, please, I would like to book another 50 Leopards, and then maybe 3 months later another 100. So that needs to be harmonized, and I think we need to do this under either a lead buyer approach by one country, or under the approach of, as it's pointed out in the white paper, the EU in a wider sense. Might be EDA, might be procurement agencies, and so on and so on. But I think that is very good. That is highly necessary. And then last point, and we may come back to this, is to really lower the hurdles which we have in our regulations. I think there's a lot to do. You mentioned this, Mr. Kubilius, rightly, and this is something which we have to address on the European side with the Defense Omnibus regulation, but also on the national side, because this is an exercise we are doing currently also in Germany, but it goes hand in hand. If you just look to the environmental assessments, for example, you can relax a little bit the German legislation, German regulations. However, it needs also a relaxation on the European side.
Thanks very much. Mrs. von Hahn, I mean, you're representing the industry that is already very much Europeanized. So how does it look from that perspective?
Well, there's hardly anything to add to what Mr. Aspudin said. Maybe this one point, you pointed it out very well, so just likewise, buy whatever we can in Europe. We are here to perform, to ramp up as fast as we can if we are taking away the bureaucratic hurdles, if we get enough raw materials, if we have a stable power supply, if we have stable infrastructures that we need. So it's a huge ecosystem of framework conditions that we need to enable us to perform. But at the core stands whatever we can, we will provide. That is a whole lot. But there will be always something left to be purchased elsewhere, and this is why I would also pledge for buy whatever you can in Europe, but really try to strengthen as well the transatlantic bonds as well.
Thanks very much. Ambassador, Poland had, since quite a while, a very ambitious industrial policy on the defense side. Now there is the ask what member states can contribute. Do you see where are the main areas where you would say Poland would chip into what the European Commission offers?
Poland had a very ambitious purchasing program, and now the development of industrial bases goes on. And with all what we are doing now, which is fine on the European level, and it is already sometimes late, Commissioner Kubilius said how much Russia modernized and developed and scaled up its production. I still have in the back of my head talks with Ukrainian militaries a year ago. They were telling me that the lesson from the front is that expensive weapon is destroyed almost in the same period as less expensive weapon, and they need also hundreds and millions of pieces of conventional, traditional weapons. They illustrated it to me saying that a tank defends more or less 500 meters of a front line. And if they get 20 Abrams or Leopards, they may probably defend 10 kilometers. But if they get 120 of T-72 or other, the front line to defend is much larger, and they do not need to train so much to operate with these other weapons. So these 3 years have allowed us to really scale up first the spendings, but also to mobilize people. We are talking mostly on finances. As Napoleon said that he needs three things to fight a war: money, money, and money. But we need also people ready to engage, and people skilled and trained to engage. And third, we need material and we need allies. And these are the four major elements that we need to mobilize European defense. Poland is able and ready now to spend almost 5% of GDP on defense and security. Not everything is produced in Poland, not everything is produced in Europe, because we do not have time to wait until European producers come with it. Therefore, we welcome so much this program that will speed up now production and ability in Europe to produce what is needed.
Thanks very much. Pia, as one of the experts on defense industry in Berlin, you of course had the obligation to read all that, the White Book and all the things around it. So Is there some water that needs to be poured in the wine? I mean, everybody now seems to be happy, or is it really something where you say that has a potential? Let's go forward on it.
Well, thank you. I think it's the best spot to be in, to be the water pourer.
Sure.
But before I do that, I actually do want to touch on some of the positive things that I think come out of the White Book. The way I read it is that the Commission sort of clarifies its role in the sense, as you have also said, the Commission or the European Union can be an enabler. An enabler for what exactly? First of all, I think communication. I think that this paper finds such a clear language is no small thing. It's an important thing because we still have domestic audiences that need to be convinced, and people trust the European Union, so it matters what you write into these papers, even if they don't read it in full. Secondly, I think the paper makes a good argument to say, what can the European Union do? We can enable money. We can provide a regulative framework. I think where I'm not so sure, and now comes the water part, is will the European Commission be allowed to play a role of a strategic enabler? I think you have identified strategic priorities in terms of closing certain capability gaps, not every, important ones, for good reasons. But there it's like a tennis match, no? You have made a serve, I think a good serve, and now all eyes and center courts go back to member states. And member states will have to decide if the prime vehicle is that we consolidate demand. Well, will member states actually do it themselves? Will lead nation concepts be enough? I think the jury is still out on that. Sometimes I think, yes, it helps. Is it enough of a consolidation? I'm not so sure. And will member states be willing to give the Commission a chance to actually do that, to identify demand? And here I think the paper, I mean, maybe it's not the fault of the paper, but it's unclear what actually the vehicle is, yeah? Do you have a leverage over that, or can you just be nice and ask?
That, of course, brings us back to an answer from the Commission, but let me add one thing to that. I mean, so we're not only talking about closing capability gaps, but about scaling up, ramping up. Are the European institutions ready for that, or do we need a reform of the European institutions as well? Because if all that plan works out that you have laid out, if so much money not only needs to be spent nationally, but needs to be supported by the European Union institutions, is that something that the current setup of institutions is ready to do so, or do we need to think about big as well or smart as well on this?
Well, thanks a lot. Really very important strategic questions. And, well, definitely, you know, I'm always repeating, white paper is just the first step, you know, into what we need to do. And definitely there are also questions which are rising in different discussions in the parliament on what I would call, you know, governance of defense or institutional arrangements of defense. And that will come. I see really that will come, and we shall need to have another paper, whatever, you know, yellow or green, or we shall find, you know, also touching those issues. But for me, always it looked like that now we need to send a very strong signal, both to us, to Ukrainians, and to Putin, that we are gearing up with our real material readiness, you know, that we shall produce tanks and so on and so on. Of course, in order to start to implement those programs, what I said, you know, implementation, we need to look into also into our very, you know, how to say, not big institutions, but our services, you know, like DEFIS. My, you know, DEFIS is Directorate General for Defense Industry and Space. It's almost the smallest, you know, directorates. And we're getting now responsibility to supervise or to approve the member states' projects for forget all those titles, you know, for 150 billion, you know, loans. So that will demand simply manpower, you know, much bigger. So we need to look into that, and we shall try to do. Now on what Commission can do and what are the limits. Again, this is, you know, not so easy perhaps to define. It's, learning by doing. We are very, very careful. We understand, both member states' sensitivity. Commissioner for Defense is totally new institution. So where, it fits, it's not very clear, but we are trying to do our job. And when I said, implementation, I see very clearly what is next in our agenda. Next in our agenda is European Council in June, where I hope we shall be able, with all the consultations, with NATO, with European Defence Agency, which is again, not under our, how to say, influence. It's EAS, we have even inside of EU some kind of overlapping, but everything is where we are working quite good, that together with those institutions, we shall manage to do, several things. First of all, of course, we hope that we shall be able to provide clear list of needs, what we were talking, aggregated demands for industries, for us, to understand what really is needed. And I hope, I'm always saying, I'm not pretending, and we are not pretending to replace NATO. NATO is that organization, which needs to tell us, I would say, a very simple question. What is more important today, tanks or drones? And I see that debate, and I'm always answering in a very simple way. Don't ask my opinion. This is, where we need to have real military advice. Learning from Ukraine and so on, but that's what we need. So, so one thing is really those needs. Second thing, we want to put, the list, optional list for member states to decide on so-called strategic enablers. What are we going to do, where we need really member states to go together? As much, on procurement of ammunition, member states can go alone. They will make mistake. They will pay a bigger price. We saw that from EDIRPA, that if member states are going together with joint procurement, the prices are going down because of the scale of demand. But, sometimes you cannot convince politicians they are going directly and making mistakes. But on implementation of strategic enablers, on implementation of those, defense projects of common European interest, where the member states need to work together, we can, present them options. We can make some kind of proposals how those projects should look like, how much they cost. But member states will need to decide. And then we can look how we shall implement. And perhaps that each project can have, very different, both governance structure, both implementation structure, and, and all the questions which are related very much with how they will be used after and things like that. So we have quite I'm always saying, we have quite an interesting experience from space. Because in space, the projects, the best projects worldwide, like Galileo, like Copernicus, now Iris Square, are developed by all the member states all together. Both through European Space Agency, through our DEFIS, and through Oispuu, it appears that we can work together, Europeans, we can work together. In defense, it's something, different. I will not go very deeply down why it's different, but I hope if we have some kind of good examples, so maybe we can, spread those examples as some kind of inspiration also on the issues related with defense.
Thanks very much, Commissioner. That brings me back again to the military and to the customer and the planning of the. As you said in your keynote speech, the link between NATO and the European Union has been strengthened, and we no longer talk about EU capability targets, but for this we very much look into the NATO capability targets, which I think is very much a progress that we have clarity on this, even if the targets are partly classified. However, then the question is, do the targets and the priorities remain the same, or because of the development that we have in the US, we basically need to change? So is it that we have to prepare for a European way of war, General Freuding, and how to integrate Ukraine into this, and by that need to change also the planning, also take into account what the ambassador possibly said? So do we need to change the formula of how we do defense planning, and by that also where the capabilities and the systems drop out? Or is it something where we have to say we don't have the time to change the system? We just have to, do it a little bit by the rule of thumb because time is ticking against us.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's if you pose a question, what do we need? The answer would be, we need what is necessary for the defense of the alliance, what is necessary for the defense of every inch of our alliance. For that we have clear, and I think that's the difference if we go back a couple of years ago, we now have very concrete regional plans how to defend the alliance. These are tactical plans. We know very well every tactical commander knows what he has to do and what we need capability-wise, what we need system-wise to fulfill these plans, to make them executable. And by making them executable, they are credible. And by making them credible, they are for deterrence and for credible deterrence. I think that's most important. As everybody in this room and in the audience knows that there is a normal cycle from time to time to look into these capability targets. We will have new capability targets the nations agreed on, and we will most likely get them in the summer. And of course, the experience of the Ukraine war will be fitted in there. I don't think that the current discussion in Europe and in the United States should lead us to any process which brings us into the positions that we discuss these agreed capability targets from the very beginning. I think these capability targets must be realistic. Only if they are realistic we can achieve them, and only if they are achievable, they are credible. With regard to new technique and with regard to the learnings from the Ukraine war, I think we have to be very careful that we do not try to copy the Ukraine war. I think as every war, it's a very unique war, because the Ukrainians fight with what they have at hand and what is available for them. Of course, we have to very much look into the learnings of this war and where systems and tactics and techniques are changing and how we could progress. And the yardstick must always be that we can fulfill, execute the defense plans. And we have to look into how we can improve the means with which we are fighting. And there's always a question, do we have enough? Do we have the best equipment? Do we have the best training? Do we have the best plan to defend successfully, to win any war we are opposed to?
Okay, good. From the industry point of view, I mean, are you ready? Is that what the Commission has put on the table, where you say that's enough for us? And what's the kind of the role between what the Commission can offer and what still the national customer basically brings to you?
Yeah, I think I would like to support what Commissioner Kubilius said. I think this is, one of the merits of the white paper, that it provides the member states with a high degree of responsibility in doing what needs to be done and getting needs aligned. So I think it is, like General Freuding said, NATO is asking for certain capabilities, and this ask is directed to the member states. And the member states have to translate this into planning of concrete procurement, and this procurement needs the kind of alignment. And I think if you look back to the, let's say, 10 or 20 years in the past, we always had a commission which was a little bit over-ambitious, and member states which were not enough ambitious in a sense. And I think now the white paper is putting this into the right relationship, and on the one hand stresses the responsibility of the member states, which is a very high responsibility, and the pressure is bigger than ever before. But on the other hand, it provides much more tools from the Commission side and guidance from the Commission side what can be done in order to really come up with this kind of harmonization. And if, as you mentioned in your speech, the decisions taken in Germany by the future coalition, I think this is really key. I think now we will not have any more these kind of limitations in the defense budget and the armament budget, which is a completely new situation. But at the same moment, everybody will look at us, industry, in which kind of time can you now deliver? And I think this is where we need really right now this kind of alignment of the needs for the most prominent products. And I think this is where the white paper really gives a big push and a very good substantial support.
Good. Ms. von Hahn, you're also representing that industry that has to do with a lot with enablers, not only on the transport side, but also on the space side. So everything that is about communication, finding targets, sending signals, etc., etc. How would you say, if you look into the future of how this business area and the market would develop, is it something where the Commission, building on the civilian projects, can really become an actor and provide more infrastructure also for the military? Or is it something where you would say, no, that would stay still with governments and an intergovernmental approach, etc., etc.? Give us an idea of how you would look into this, or what you would wish for.
I just recently talked to a CEO of a big space company, and he said, make no mistake, everything that happens in space is dual use anyway. So I think the question hardly exists, because everything, you have communication, as you said, we have Earth observation as two main factors. Everything can be used for both matters, and there must be. I think so. Evidently, before the space sector lies a bright future for good reasons. The only thing is, it has always been that way. Only nobody knew about it. The space bubble is. As you know, I only was given the great chance of being the managing director of BDI only 5 months ago. I stand there open with my mouth wide open on how stellar and how brilliant all these companies I see in that sphere are, in terms of their sense of innovations and their engineering capabilities and their business sense. And that applies to the very, very big companies, Airbus Defence and Space, OHB, and Zolt, many big players, but also to the very many smaller ones like Livio or others I've seen across the room. So the key to the success of the space sector, and we must be successful in applying more space appliances, is in cooperation. Between the Commission and the ESA, amongst the member states, amongst big players and small players. And this is what I see as crucial to gain right now, because it hasn't been developed so far enough. There's too many fractions within the space community, and too less acknowledgement from the outside world how much space is needed. But at the same time, I see this great shift in awareness amongst the policymakers and amongst the public that this is a great urgency we have to tackle here. And I liked one passage in the white paper. I like many things about the white paper. One passage I liked very much. I think it was one of the last sentences. It said, we have to be a defense union here. So actually we have to sort of turn the European Union into a defense union. And space, in that space, a very crucial role, because all defense capabilities start in space.
Mm. Pierre, if you could add one sentence or one paragraph to the white paper, what would you add? I mean, you could also say you could take out something, but I don't want to put you that much on the spot. If you could add something to that, what is that?
I am right.
The Commission suggests that member states stop defining key defense technologies on a national basis.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question.
But if I have only one sentence, that will be the sentence.
Yeah. That's a very good one. That's a very good...
Because I think it's part of, if I may now add a second sentence, it's part of, I mean, we can always wonder why, among the many obstacles of why member states never used the fact that they had less money or the fact that they had more money to harmonize demand, I think one of them is that they always found a good reason to shield some of the domestic industry. And I think sort of getting a sense of that the industry is a strategic asset. We will have to define what is key. We may also have to agree on how much fragmentation in supply in these key industries may actually be good for, in terms of resilience, in terms of competition. I don't want to consolidate everything to two suppliers. But we should have a collective conversation about that, and not one that is driven by then, national, let's say, interests, considerations that are all legitimate in a democracy. But I'm sure that they're not very helpful in being effective.
Yeah, now we're having a conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe I start with the Polish ambassador, not asking again about Poland, but I mean that's a very sensible idea to do this. Would you, if you look around in the rest of Europe, would you see that the mindset changes into that direction? Say, let's define not only the size of the ammunition or something more peripheral, but key those areas where also a lot of money goes in the defense sector, and say, okay, we open this up at least from the definition side, that other countries would join on that, and Poland possibly even as well?
The awareness differs depending on how far or how narrow to the front line you are and how direct the threat are. Therefore, the awareness in Poland is much higher, or in Lithuania or Estonia, much higher than in Spain or Portugal. But this is also, I guess, the learning curve we all are going through, because countries realize that the war is not fought on the front line. The wars are fought also within our countries because of different sabotage or other adverse reactions. But just to add to what has been said a moment ago on the address of defense industry, to change the perspective from securing external markets, serving own defense needs. Because the industry worked for many years with this perspective to secure markets outside Europe or national market. But now we have a common market, and I may only sign up with what has been said a while ago, to start defining in common our needs and then adjust also the market to the needs.
Mr. Asputin, you wanted to comment on that as well?
Yeah, I think, first of all, we should not be too optimistic about, let's say, a defense union or something like that, because we have different national sovereignties. I'm not sure, I'm not a politician, whether we will overcome this in a foreseeable future. And as long as we have this national sovereignties, I think they go also with certain ideas of sovereign technologies, which we have in our own capacities, in our own industries, and so on and so on. And many of the countries in Europe have defined these kind of sovereign technologies. Germany has just again done this in December last year. France has sovereign technologies, Sweden has sovereign technologies, other countries have this. So my idea would be rather to combine, let's say, these countries, which are the biggest spenders for armament in Europe, let them sit around one common table and let them define for the years to come what the major armament systems will be they're going for, and then try to see who is taking the lead in which kind of program and which kind of industry is taking the lead where. I think that is maybe, from my point of view and my experience, this is an exercise which we have to do before, let's say, we come to the thinking of a harmonized situation, because otherwise I'm afraid it will not really work. And my point is it should work. This time it should work.
Mr. Kubilius, you wanted to comment on that as well. And after that, I would open up to
Very good comment. You know, exactly. I started to look through, and I think that it's exactly what for some reasons, we did not, put some kind of sentence. Despite the fact that I remember very well when I was nominated and my hearing was, I exactly put the same point, saying about, I don't remember exactly the number of article from Treaty on Functioning of European Union, 346 or
346, yeah.
Yeah. Which, member states are overusing from my point of view, because article says that because of security reasons, member states can, on defense issues, not to follow single market rules. And then member states are jumping immediately on this article. They're taking care about their own national industry. Is that good or bad? Well, I would not, elaborate too much. National industries like that, very much. And then politicians are starting to like very much, that industry is happy. So, when industry is happy, also politicians are quite happy, But the long-term consequence of that is really exactly this fragmentation, which does not allow our industry to be strong enough to compete globally, and that will come down to such a situation that, as it was said by Draghi report, only 20% of European member states were procuring, when they were procuring weapons, they procured only 20% from European industries. That's a consequence. So the question is really absolutely correct what you put, The question is, well, we, because of different perhaps reasons, that sentence did not appear in the white paper, but what I'm very happy is that it appeared in European Parliament resolution on white paper, exactly the same sentence, that, member states should be convinced not to overuse this article 646. Of course, it does not mean that it will easily change the situation, but this topic is here, is around us, and again, the question is how to create an incentive. I don't see a lot of possibilities for us to, from Commission, to present some kind of regulation which would, change the situation. First of all, this is a treaty, and to change treaties is almost impossible for the time being. So the question is how to incentivize member states to start to change their behavior. And that is why, again and again, I'm repeating, joint procurement, from my point of view, is one of the crucial instruments. And, unfortunately, Parliament and Council still are discussing EDIP. I hope that they will manage to do it till before the summer, but even in that will not be enough, because EDIP will stay with very limited financial power, 1.5 billion. It's, well, we are, pretending to say that Commission will play here a role, but with 1.5 billion is really not a lot of possibilities to incentivize member states to go for joint procurement.
So let me open up the room, and if you have questions in the audience, Mrs. Hauschild.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Kubilius. I'm Elizabeth Hauschild from a family-owned business, the Deal Company, now become prominent due to the IST, for example, Ukraine. My question is with regard to the supporting mechanisms that you pointed to, like the CSDDD, CSRD, the omnibus procedure that we do all agree. You consider it very good that finally, after talking about these issues over 4 years, that it will hamper the European industry, but particularly the ramping up process in defense, that they are now stopped and revised. But this leads me to the question, when you are looking on the long term into the Commission's work and figuring out what kind of procedures that might pop in other general directorates with your colleagues that might have an impact on defense and ramping up the defense. Have you already established a mechanism, or do you think of a mechanism to have an early warning identifier, so to say, what might pop up? I mean, it's very often, like also CSDD, it's on a dormant state, nobody really realized, and all of a sudden it's on the table, but then very often it's too late. How can we handle that situation within the Commission? Thank you.
Thanks very much.
If I would know. No, but you know, well, definitely now we are going with a lot of those, you know, attempts to simplify omnibuses, and we propose to have omnibus on defense. And thanks a lot for associations sending us, you know, the first proposals. And governments, when I met with Minister Pistorius first time, you know, immediately he gave me the list what he thinks, you know, should be simplified. And very interesting, never thought about, you know, something. So the only issue that if to compare with other simplification omnibuses, for us it's quite a big task, because other simplification omnibuses were going with one regulation to make it more simple. We need to cover, you know, the whole list of different, you know, aspects, because there is no such a regulation on defense. There are regulations on, you know, environmental evaluation and so on and so on. And then, you know, one of the comments from Minister Pistorius was very precise, you know. Banking sector is avoiding to finance production of tanks because tanks are not climate friendly.
Yeah.
You know, so that's how somewhere, I don't know which banks are, you know, evaluating in such a way, but you know, there is some kind of such a problem. So on simplification in general, well, I think that, yeah, we need to know, it's not easy answer, how to keep, you know, some kind of internal checks, how to not to make, you know, some regulations really for the sake of regulations. When we started to discuss, you know, all those issues, I use terminology that we are facing inflation of reporting. You know, all the regulations are demanding, you know, huge reports on everything. Who is reading those reports? Nobody knows. You know what you need to do. You know. So again. Then I was joking that it would be good, you know, that we should not make such a simplification, but we shall need to ask, again, industries to report on simplification. No, if simplification is working. So, but my view is really we need to be very prudent, but I am not so optimistic about what kind of outcomes we can have. This is a permanent problem with whatever bureaucracy you will take. If you will read, you know, scientists, experts, and so on, from Max Weber to, you know, even Thatcher. If you will read Thatcher memoirs, how she was trying to diminish, you know, bureaucracy, and she was very happy that she was able, you know, to cut one or another department. After the year she was coming into that place, she saw that there are two departments instead of one. So, you know, I'm not pessimistic, but we need to understand that this is, you know, that will always be a problem. We need to be active, you know, in trying to not to allow, you know, to expand all those reporting or other, you know, requirements. But also, what is very important, because again, as a former prime minister, I know that quite a lot of regulation is not only coming from Commission side, from European Union, but also from the national side. And on a national level, you know, governments can do a lot. For example, when Rheinmetall came to Lithuania recently, or as it is, I need to say to the country which I know the best, you know, not speaking about, but you know, okay. You know, when they came to Lithuania, government saw that if we shall go with all the requests, regulations, and so on, environmental regulations and things like that, so we shall build that, you know, factory, I don't know when, and we shall need to ask, you know, Putin to postpone his aggression plans, you know, till we shall build. So government find a way how to, you know, create some kind of green corridor for all the needed, you know, permissions to be issued, and that was done, and legally was done, not you know, not breaking the rules.
Thank you very much. Any other questions in the room? Anybody else? Please.
Thanks, Daniel from Live.
Maybe you wait for the microphone because that's important for the people who listen to us online as well. Thanks very much.
I am Daniel Seidel, the founder of Live Here, which was just mentioned. We are coming from the commercial industry and we are going into defense. And what we are asking ourselves is, do we go the national part? We are a German company with the German armed forces. Do we go to other member states or do we directly go European? What is your recommendation? How should we approach it? Because I think it's the same for other companies, right? We want interoperability, but we also want speed.
Well, I don't know if I understood the question. Where you want to go? You want to have what? You know, financial or?
We want to offer our services. So the question is, if we focus, for example, on the German armed forces for speed.
Yeah. Okay. Here will be, as we have said in our white paper, and this is written into regulation on EDIP, that here will be a so-called European sales mechanism, which will start from some kind of, how to call it, you know, not menu, but whatever, almanac of all the, you know, all the industrial producers, you know, which will be able to put their own, you know, advertisement into some kind of one place, and that maybe will help member states to understand and to see who is able to produce what. So it should come quite soon when EDIP will be approved. We hope before summer that here will be such kind of instrument.
Just one addition. I think at the moment we have the situation where very understandably many companies want to enter into the area of defense. Especially here in Germany, we have a situation that we have a certain decline in the automotive and automotive supply industry, and I think it's a good idea to encourage them to bring their resources as quickly as possible into defense, and I think that is something which we can help to facilitate on the one hand as associations. On the other hand, I think it's something the government can support, and I hope that the upcoming government in Germany will massively support this by creating a situation where they really tell everybody, now we have to enter into this, we have to do this, we have to join forces, and so on and so on. But with all the instruments you described in the white paper, I think it's also a European issue, and I think the answer from my side is it's happening on every level, so to speak, also on the national, but also on the European.
Thanks very much, and thanks for your question. One question coming in from a user from YouTube is, can the European Union and the United Kingdom support the Ukraine in air defense and air policing if the US drops out? Not sure who is going to answer that.
Well, actually, we are doing a lot in air defense, all the European nations. And if you have an overview what the Europeans did and what the Americans did over the last years, it was about 60% Europe and Canada, which provided Ukraine support, and 40% US. I think Europe could even step up more what we actually did. Germany did it today. Great Britain did it a week before. Norway promised to increase their budget for Ukraine support for more than 3 billion for the next years to come. I think if there is a political will to step in, we could step in, but for the moment, of course, we hope that the United States stay committed to the support for Ukraine as well.
Thanks very much. There's one question over there. Annelies.
Thank you very much. My name is Annelies. I'm a former member of the European Parliament on the Defense Committee, and I'm now working at Brunswick Group. My question goes to military mobility. Thank you so much for bringing this topic also up into your white paper. And the question on that is that Germany invests now a lot in infrastructure. And the interesting part is how much and where military mobility is being brought into that package. And I've questioned to the EU Commissioner if you're talking about military mobility to the German government, including the 500 hotspots or situations you identified being weak and need to be kind of filled up, but also a question to the Polish ambassador, how do you handle military mobility? Because that has been perceived very positively by different German stakeholders, like the Hamburg Harbor, for example. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Who's ready to?
Who is on German plans? Well, I cannot elaborate too much on German plans, but
well, I think it will be a question for the next government, and I think it will be an interesting question. How much of the infrastructure investment fund, extra budget, Sondervermögen für Infrastructure is going into defense? I think, of course, defense could argue, if I'm looking into a crystal ball, defense could argue that, of course, infrastructure must be able to improve military mobility as well. So I think there's a mutual benefit, or it's a dual use extra budget, not only for normal infrastructure, but also for military infrastructure as well, for the German part. What I would like to underline is what we appreciated most, that in the defense white paper of the European Union, military mobility was not only used as a term for improving the infrastructure in the European countries, but also military mobility with regard to improve the way how military goods can flow between European Union and the Ukraine. I think this really sometimes hampers a lot Ukraine support, and there is any improvement is highly appreciated.
Thanks very much.
yeah, you know, military mobility absolutely clear is one of those, you know, what we call strategic projects of common European interest. Now we had some kind of initial revision, and we saw, this is also other services are doing, 500 hotspots which demand improvement. We are working also closely with NATO. We were asking, you know, their preferences, what they see as where mobility needs to be improved, and how, you know, really military goods and military personnel will be brought to the, you know, zone of conflict, because we need to avoid, how to say, washing out military mobility, because knowing, you know, governments would like to put all the roads and everything else, you know, into military mobility package if there are money. So that is why we are really trying to be very concrete. And I hope that till the end of this year we shall publish some kind again of our strategic paper on military mobility, and we shall move forward with implementation of important things here.
Thanks very much. Very last question, and then we'll do a last quick round.
I had to answer a part of the question.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I didn't want to exclude you on that. Sorry. So we wait a minute for the next question and give the ambassador the opportunity.
For this 3 past years, what paid off was the quite new construction of most of our communication lines, roads, highways, rail and airports. And it allowed really this rather smooth flow from equipment to Ukraine through Polish territory. And this was, we were lucky that we invested in the infrastructure heavily for past 20 years. Therefore, there were no bigger bottlenecks in moving all what was needed, or from the air to Ukraine, or from the ports on the Baltic Sea down also to the biggest hub, Rzeszów, close to Ukrainian border and farther to Ukraine.
Thank you very much. And the last question, please.
Thank you very much. Said Werner, Berlin-based MIT research affiliate. I'm just wondering, and I value pretty much the question you mentioned yourself, Commissioner, what is the gadget of tomorrow? Is it tanks, is it drones? And circling back on the financial system, I think we need a range of tools. we need a range of tools in terms of financial instruments. And I feel like this is one of the big advantages we have in the West compared to our, well, Russian counterpart. And I'm just wondering, there has been discussion around creating a multilateral lending institution, an institution called the Defense, Security and Resilience Bank, that in addition to our approaches in the EU could help create a new, sort of say, big ally component out of NATO, out of EU member states, but also out of our friends from the Indo-Pacific that could help back and provide financial backing for these commercial banks to actually fund the defense industry from the ground. I'm just wondering what your call on this would be.
Well, very briefly, yes, we know those discussions about somebody is calling rearmament bank or whatever, and in some way we are participating or just following those discussions. What I can tell, Council again repeated the same request to Commission. When Council approved those rearm Europe proposals, and yesterday again supported what was presented with the regulations, now it's more or less technical issue to have Council signatures on those things. The Council repeated again that they want us to look into some kind of new possible financial instruments, innovative instruments, and so on. That is what we shall try. We shall continue to do. I said, EIB is doing now steps. What I am sometimes psychologically, I'm always warning everybody around that let's try to speak in a very careful way, not to create temptation for member states, not to use this instrument, which we now created, expecting that the next instruments will be much better, So that's, I don't know even how to find this balance, So that's what I am a little bit concerned about that. So we want now really, we want very speedy to start all those instruments which now are available. Safe loans, will be. We expect that member states will have 6 months period to put, their request. The same with national escape clause, quite a limited time. We want to go into publicly with all the member states as much as possible with their request for escape clause in order to more or less to keep stability in the markets. So everything is quite speedy, though. And of course, in between of that, we are looking also into what kind of additional possibilities we need to look for. And as I said at the very beginning, for us, white paper is just a beginning. And what we are starting to do is just a beginning. It's not everything what we managed to do with those first steps.
Excellent. As you said also in your keynote at the end, and that's also possibly where we have to end on now, it's all about implementation. So in a quick round, if I would ask the panel now, what is either the first or the most important thing that needs to happen now to implement the White Book, what would be your answers? That would be my question to you. And it's a single thing. It's not a menu. So it's one course. Who would like to start?
Yeah, from the Europeans Commission point of view, I think it's the relaxation of the respective regulations, which are really key for the issue how quickly we can proceed. And I think there is a lot of thinking on the national side how we can relax the burdens here. However, they are relying on the relaxation of the European regulations first. And I think that is why these signals have to come very quickly. And it's not only about implementation, it's still about the key sentences like a quote from the paper, the only way we can ensure peace is to have the readiness to deter. Unfortunately, this is still not widely understood. If I follow discussions here, public discussions, so we have to do both. We have to look at implementation, but also to convince as such.
Thank you very much.
I would say from the point of view of defense, and anti-rocket systems to shield the European territory what we call this Shield East, also to defend the territory, because if we do not defend the territory, then industry is also affected and all the activity of our societies.
Thanks very much. Pia.
One wish.
One thing.
I have the one sentence, is the one wishes all the time. I wish for the June Council to present a list that is crystal clear and has no more than 7 projects, after which we really, really know what we're doing.
Excellent. Commissioner.
I don't know what does it mean to sit next to you that I am able to repeat, because I put for myself very simple, sentence. We created opportunities for, financial opportunities for member states to raise their financial, defense spending. Now we need to create opportunities where they should spend, and that's exactly 7 lists or whatever, 5 or 10. I agree absolutely. That is now our task for implementation, really, to present member states opportunities where to invest.
Thanks. Ms. Van Haan.
True sovereignty in space.
Excellent. Okay. Gerard Freuding.
Invest in defense must pay off, would be my first sentence. Second, rules and regulations for certification must be mutually acknowledgeable. Interoperability is key, and we must be fast. To become second is not an option.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you to the audience. Thank you to everybody online. I hope it was worth the investment. And see you outside. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, that...